Hey you. Yeah, you right there who is celebrating your 800th day of logging into the game Genshin Impact. Just wanna ask, how much is too much? Is 10 too much? 20? 40? 80? Or perhaps 100 will finally be too much for a dedicated, consistent, hardworking, and most importantly, passionate gamer about the game Genshin Impact like you. Towards the end of my last episode, I briefly mentioned, by having some walls of text on the video, about how the only meaningful and tangible diversity that exists in the game at the moment is the characters and weapons that you can obtain specifically through the wishing mechanic. I mean, shortly after the second year anniversary of this game, we are already clocking in at 59 playable characters with another 2 on their way into the game. And if we take weapons of all rarities and all types of sources into consideration, we have just over 150 unique weapons in the game for the people to have fun with. Of course, there's that elephant in the room that I did not address, being the artifacts and the RNG that comes along with them, but we can talk about that in some other time. For now, characters and weapons. Genshin started with 21 characters if you include Wendy, and God knows how many weapons. Yeah, I can't be bothered to count the weapons at this point because it is already too much for me. Some of these characters and weapons are free upon starting the game. Some weapons can be crafted as long as you have the materials required. Some of them are also available for purchase on the premium currency shop using the Stark Leaders, while for the rest of the lineup, you would have to literally offer your primogems and pray to the gods in order to receive them. Now, you, the dedicated, consistent, hardworking, and passionate gamer will surely say, well, that's good news, right? Because if I am granted the access to all these different characters and weapons, now I can freely explore and experience my very own definition of fun within this absolutely beautiful and highly immersive open world fantasy action role-playing gacha game. Yeah, I would love to agree with you until MiHoyo said what they said. I know, it's already dead, I know it. But this is exactly why I asked the question in the very first place. How much is too much? For the people who are saying I am now contradicting myself, or I'm trying to, because I of all people said we needed more gameplay variety and diversity aside from the maximum FOMO inducing limited events in Genshin, here's why I said what I said. MiHoyo as a company is all about money, and it has a clear bias when it comes to designing the content in the game. All of the content in Genshin can be divided into 2 categories, 2 different ways. You have free content and paid content, and you also have directly profitable content and indirectly profitable content. The free content is accessible by everyone, no strings attached, no terms and conditions needed. The paid content, however, is a gacha system in which you can obtain new shit by chance, and of course, you also have the resin system. Most of the stronger characters and weapons are obtained and built through these 2 systems. If you don't realize it by this point, MiHoyo only puts effort into the appearance of their characters and weapons, or literally anything that can be indirectly profitable for MiHoyo, so long as they look and sound good on the outside. The story is free, and it is decent because people are there for the story and they will spend money to show support. You know, spending money for the sake of it. But the way the story was presented to the players is mediocre. The world is free and it is massive for a game that runs on a phone. And I have to admit, it runs like nobody's business. And naturally, people will spend more money to show support. But the replay factor for exploration is also mediocre. And here we go, the characters which you obtain by directly spending money, their skill kits along with the elemental reaction system are great, but the enemies that we the players are supposed to challenge with those characters are also mediocre. Do you see a pattern here? Paid content are always well designed, which is totally understandable by the way, but while some free content are on par with the paid content because they are directly related to the main premise of the game, most of them are pretty mediocre. So if you remember that dead horse somewhere that I kept beating over and over again, yeah, let's get into that. In Spiral Abyss, you have a total of 12 floors, and the last 4 are refreshed every 3 weeks. Each of the 4 floors will be split into 3 chambers, and each chamber will be further split into 2 sides. So whenever you, the player, is attempting the Spiral Abyss, you will bring a total of 8 characters, 4 for each side when you challenge each floor. Yeah, just so many characters, right? But we go a little easy on MiHoyo for this one. Let's say that in between the 4 floors, the playstyle that is required out of you differs a little bit every floor, resulting in you switching out some members here and there, and you end up with like a total of 16 members to clear the Spiral Abyss with 36 stars. How many playable characters do we have again? No, scrap that. How many characters do you have another 5 years from now? Yeah, the competition is vigorous here, even if you only own 2/3 of the current lineup like I do. If you still don't get it, my problem with Genshin is the paradox of choice, even though they outright refuse to design more endgame content because of, you know, FOMO. Not to mention that the Spiral Abyss always follow the release of the brand new character. If you, the player, have made a conscious decision to not wish for the new characters, you'll be bored out of your ass for the next 6 weeks. But if you do wish for the new characters, you might be spending money, which may come to regret later, because the meta can be easily changed by MiHoyo with a snap of the fingers. If MiHoyo is not happy with a certain character, they can just bonk it out of the abyss by introducing enemies that handicap said character. Apart from the ever-changing meta, we also have the problem of power creeping and feature creeping, because MiHoyo also completely refused to do any character-based balancing to recover the relevancy of some of their older characters. Can't be bothered to do that, man. You can just release a new, better character and charge the player base for it, you know? Even if they backpedal and do what I just mentioned in the future, these 2 types of creeping problems persist anyway because of the constellation system. That system is self-explanatory. It blows my mind that the same characters are capable to power creep and feature creep on themselves. Whatever. I don't want to spend any more time on it. For the exploration part, I know most characters have their own unique utility talent. They will grant the player some form of convenience during exploration, and also some specific characters can help you have a better time maneuvering around the open world. But you can only bring up to 4 members whenever you're exploring, which once again means that there's an overwhelming competition even amongst the older characters, because you also engage in combat when you're exploring. Can't bring a brand spanking new character that hits like red noodle now, can you? Unless you are a content creator who is trying to entertain people, there's no point putting yourself through something stupid like that. Just a side note here, it is absolute pain in the ass to swap team configurations in this game when you're exploring the open world. Just another reason why having too many characters can potentially end up hurting the game itself, because people are more incentivized to simply explore with their most well-built characters instead of having a little bit of a great time with all the characters they own. At this point, you probably realize that the game itself is the one that is having a massive contradiction against itself, and the solution towards that contradiction has been intentionally pushed to the players. You have a world that is very bare bone apart from the visuals and sounds. You happen to have a pretty decent combat system, but you can't be bothered to introduce more complexity into the game, especially in the combat department, because allegedly it will cause unnecessary FOMO. So instead, you dump as much money as you need to design all these characters to create an illusion in the player's minds that your game has a lot to offer, even though it is practically empty on the inside, because no matter how many characters you end up building, you could have finished building all 59 characters at this very moment, and still, only 8 of your characters can enter the spiral abyss at a time. I know some people will say that the game has a farming problem, good artifacts are just hard to come by, and therefore it is impossible to finish building all characters at the same time, so the competition wouldn't even exist in the first place. I will address that in a future episode, just stay tuned. You can also argue how you are able to repeat the spiral abyss all you want. It simply gets boring after you have cleared it once during the refresh cycle, and you will end up doing something else anyway, because the enemies you deal with during every one of these cycles is the same. Just because endgame content are usually indirectly profitable content in a live service game, which means that if you not yield immediate profit for you, MiHoyo, doesn't mean that therefore it is okay for you to cut corners on it. The directly profitable and indirectly profitable content complement each other in a live service game, because not everything is free, and similarly, not everything costs you money in a live service game. People spend money to get the characters so that they can use those characters to enjoy the rest of the world. If you cut corners on the indirectly profitable content, like having more options at the end game for example, you are basically telling the players that they have offered their money as a tribute for nothing else but the spiral abyss, which is a game mode that is kinda boring. Just saying though, I'm just saying. Funny thing to note here is that even the so-called solution to the contradiction is also a contradiction itself. Why is that? It is because we the players are the customers of this game, this product that has been developed and proposed to the free market by MiHoyo. The main responsibility on making a good product supposedly lies on the shoulders of MiHoyo. All we have to do as the customers, again, supposedly, is to use the product and give our honest feedback after we are done using the product. Somehow, there are Genshin sims out there who think that the responsibility of creating a fun gaming experience lies on the shoulders of the gamers themselves, even if it means that we have to come up with weird ways to enrich our own playing experience when the game is so bare-boned with what it can offer, even if you do choose to give them your money. If there's anybody who is calling out Pokemon or Fallout 76 as an argument, that's a deflection. Just because Pokemon has been a pile of hot garbage for years doesn't mean that it is okay for Genshin to act like one as well. Somehow, people just think that it is completely acceptable when the same bullshit is applied onto a gacha game, because technically it is a free-to-play game. There are probably people out there who are also arguing that Genshin is a live service game, so it is more of an ongoing service than a complete product, and therefore the same logic cannot apply. Well, you may have gotten the semantics right. Congratulations. But once again, it is completely up to the company to facilitate and provide the content for the players to explore and experience their own definition of fun, not the players. Okay, the company is responsible for convincing me that the game is worth my time, not the other way around. Fun fact by the way, MiHoyo provides tools for the players themselves to design their own content and share it within the community, but only for the Taiko event and the Liar event, and that means, you know what that means. I don't want to say it for the third time, you know it. So, assuming that MiHoyo is never implementing new combat-based endgame content ever again, how much is too much? Well, in my humble opinion, it is already too much, because up until now, I've only talked about the characters. I didn't even get into the weapons, but well, they're the same thing anyway. Heck, even if it is okay now, the competition amongst the characters and weapons will only get more vigorous and vicious down the line. MiHoyo better up their game on the gameplay variety and diversity, because I am not wishing for shit if there isn't any appealing content for me to put my characters and weapons into good use. Well, not that I will use them anyway, because I basically stopped playing the game at this point, aside from recording footage for my videos. They will lose their player base eventually when competitors start to flood the market. It absolutely blows my mind to find out that there is such a company that is this resistant to change, even when it is so painfully obvious that the game needs to change. Probably because of money and sims. I don't know. On top of that, since Genshin Impact is a live service game, you would think it is inevitable for the game to eventually change, and yet, the company is still saying no, fuck you, because we designed our game perfectly. I'm still not done with criticizing the game, by the way. If you are interested in hearing more about my opinions towards the game, you know what to do. I'm Frameless Tenno, you can just call me FT, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.